Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Long and Hard podcast. Oh my God, there's a lot of sunlight coming through this window. I look a little bit washed out. We're going to move that. There we go.
Looking a little too angelic.
I mean, I kind of am, but don't tell anybody.
You know,
this is Josh Blaze coming from Montreal with the sunny window. Sorry, I interrupted you there. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, white shirt, fairly pale complexion for those of you listening to the audio.
There's a reason that I wear the white shirt, because at least it makes me look slightly darker. It doesn't really help, but you know.
No, exactly. Oh, I know all the tricks in the book. I mean, this is a fairly white shirt anyways too, so. And I got this cream colored lighting behind me, which does me some favors, but anyways.
Yeah, I got to hop in a tanning bed here, but anyway, sorry, I introduced myself. This is the other guy.
Thomas Harrington, coming at you not so live from Edmonton, Alberta.
Yeah, we're only 3 hours late today, so.
Yeah, it's a good thing. I do apologize to the droves of people waiting to watch our live stream on YouTube. Yeah, only about an hour 45 late.
Yeah, I know. They're probably holding their breath, just waiting for us to.
I'm assuming you phoned your boss, said you had to take the rest of the afternoon off, wait for the show to debut. So welcome.
Thank you, Mom.
There you go.
I guess I'll introduce the topic today. Let's get it rolling. This is the one that's close and dear and near and dear to our hearts. That's what I was looking for. So,
yeah.
This is the real estate show. I called it the real estate show because why the fuck not? So we're going to be talking about everything.
Kind of all encompassing.
Yeah, all things real estate today. Because as you know, Thomas and I both have been in the industry for the last coming up on, holy shit, 4 years for you.
4 years, 3.5 for you, I guess, right?
Yeah. So we got a little bit of knowledge in the space. I mean, don't take everything we say, but as gospel. But I mean, we know a couple things about getting into real estate, selling some houses, and
we've done a thing or two, and I think I mean we started at it pretty young and pretty early, and now we're seeing more people our age or within a few years of us actually getting into the industry.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's something where we have just enough traction now to kind of think we know what we're doing. And but
I never think I know what I'm doing, but you know.
Yeah. We have a slight inkling now, we're lucky enough to say. But also, just as a general outline, I mean, this is kind of like, I guess, more realtor focused, but kind of talking about real estate as a whole. And a lot of this stuff is fairly transferable skills, I would say, to any or most kind of sales jobs. And being a realtor specifically does do a pretty good job of splitting the line almost right down the middle of being 50% entrepreneur, 50% salesperson. So you learn a lot about, pardon me, being a small business at the same time, or in theory you should, right?
Yeah, I think that you have to be somewhat a starter to get into the industry and realize that you kind of kill what you eat in the, or eat what you kill. That's what I was looking for.
Kill it. Yeah.
In the industry.
I mean, I technically kill my broccoli by stabbing it with a fork too, right? So.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway.
I've gone the whole vegetarian route, but we won't start on that. So, just kidding.
Well, I mean, we've sort of talked about our experience thus far in real estate, but to gloss over it, I guess we could say we started on a team, right?
Mm-hmm.
With one of the big number one dudes at the time, right, in the city, and it was a big team. And hell, I think that team even had around 12 or so people at one point, including us.
Yeah, and I was going to say like 14, but
something like that. It was actually a lot in hindsight, and you don't see a lot of those huge teams anymore, at least right now. And that could just be a change in kind of structure mixed with economic times kind of reflecting that, right? Where it's kind of hard to keep freaking 12 agents fed, right?
Yeah.
But, and then from that point, obviously after a few months of doing that, Josh and I thought we knew everything. So we decided to go out on our own naturally. And we're a team, just the two of us, right? Like as partners versus like a master and apprentice sort of thing. And then from there, that team transitioned into our own brokerage. That sort of flopped. And then Josh kept going the broker owner / startup / independent route, I guess. And then I went the agent route, independent agent, working within a company, just basically by myself, right?
Right. I think that one thing that we need to touch
today.
on, one thing we'll touch on just before that is like, people don't understand that when you're getting into the industry, you actually do work under some sort of roof. So you work under some sort of brokerage, at least for 2 years before you can go off and start your own shop. So,
Right.
Yeah. So I guess we'll talk a little bit about that sort of thing too.
That's a good distinction to make, especially if you're someone wanting to, start. Like we said, despite it being a more entrepreneurial venture, you can't truly start your own company at day one for regulation reasons, which is probably a different topic we can touch on today. But something to know about the real estate space as well is you do have a lot of regulatory restrictions, to call them what they are, to work within as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was like 3 years ago you actually could do that. I may be wrong, but
say that again.
Where you could like actually start a brokerage from like day one, and then they brought in some regulations.
No, it wasn't that recent. I know at one point in time there was no minimum experience requirement, but now there is.
Gotcha. And that is 2 years, as I had just dropped previously. So yeah, sorry to drop there. Keep going.
Oh, no worries. I think that's kind of where I wanted to start. It was give a gloss over of what we did. So if someone was starting tomorrow, Josh, as a realtor, what would you tell them to do?
I mean, I think that depends on a person's personality, their age, the amount of like self-startership they have, and also the amount of money they're coming into the industry with. Because it's not cheap to get into the real estate industry as a real estate agent. I think you're looking at close to about $10,000 in Alberta. We'll talk about Alberta because that's what we know and love. But you're looking at about $10,000 to get into the industry, do all your training, do your courses, and then get your key fob and all that sort of stuff lined up. So it's definitely not cheap. And I think that's why we do see some people coming into the industry now, as opposed to fresh out of university. They've had a couple of years of work under their belts in some other industry, and they're getting either fed up with it, or they've always wanted to get into real estate, and it was kind of a stepping stone before getting into the industry. So maybe that also would be why we're seeing a few more people come in as of the last year and a half.
Yeah, definitely kind of the financial bottleneck, right?
I mean, I think it also has to do with how well you can market yourself, and if you do have some sort of following getting into the industry. Like if you are a social media person and you have your 2,000 followers, I mean, you might be fine going it alone. You and I were not really like that.
No, we weren't that at all.
So one thing that we thought was a good idea was to go with a team scenario in which there was somebody that's been in the industry for X number of years, has contacts built, has systems built as well to deal with the amount of people that are coming in the door and wanting to buy and sell houses. And I mean, What are your thoughts on that? Because I mean, if were I to do it again, I don't know. I don't know what I would do, but
That's a good point. And I think, and I've kind of told this to other people, is if I was to start again fresh from tomorrow, I would actually go more what I would call like a semi-independent agent role.
Mhm.
So, number one, not go on as formal of a team as what we were on.
Mhm.
Excuse me. But to that point, you would want to kind of affiliate yourself with a few agents. So what I would do is probably go to like 5 or so agents in that brokerage, and kind of obviously introduce myself, say, hey, I'm Thomas. I'm ready to work for you. The clients maybe you don't want, they're too much of a handful. Do open houses at your listings, kind of grind it out that way. That would be the more route I would go if I was to start over.
Yeah.
Reason being is you're not really tying yourself to anyone. You're building your own brand from day one,
Mhm.
but you have something to go out and do, right? Because that's the biggest thing about real estate is, and they don't really tell you this, especially in the courses, is you kill what you eat or eat what you kill, right? So you need some way of generating that business. And further to your above point is the amount of money you're coming into it with. Well, yeah, you just heard the startup cost is somewhere between $7,000 to $10,000 all inclusive. And that is generally tax deductible, but we're not accountants, but just not to scare you off too much. But to that point, if you're coming into this as a young person, you probably don't have a lot of money to spend on advertising. So, go out and find, I would say 5 agents in your office and go do open houses and the whole like for them and handle their sign calls or whatever that they don't want to do. Now, how do you find these agents? Because the really big ones at your office are probably have their own team or like would want to recruit you for the team. You kind of want to find the middle of the road agents. And honestly, if you go to your broker and you're like, hey, who here does between 20 and 30 deals a year where they're just busy enough that they will have some excess business to give you just because, they can't do an open house every weekend or what have you.
Right.
But they're not so busy that they're building a team structure or something like that. You kind of need to find that healthy middle road of an agent. And that would be who I would approach and work for. Now, another thing that's going to be extremely controversial compared to what a lot of the advice out there is a lot of the coaching programs and the free coaching programs you hear on YouTube and all that stuff will tell you, basically, they tell you to start being kind of a dickhead about commissions and stuff from day one and be super, super firm on it and attack it like you're a 30-year veteran in the business. But I would actually go the entire opposite direction and do your first couple deals for free, honestly, right? Like offer to list someone's home for $0 just so you can get a sale under your belt. You can service a client. You can get someone who's going to give you a really great review. Or, I mean, if times are a little tougher than that, maybe do it for like whatever your hard costs are of like a couple $100 just so you're not paying totally out of pocket. But I would go that road and do a few deals for free just to get your name out there, right?
Well, I think that also you don't know the ropes. So were you willing to tag on and do all the paperwork for some other agent? I mean, that's also a way of getting some experience under your belt as well. Because I think that when you and I started, the broker of the brokerage that you and I split off to, he took both of us into the field independently and kind of did like a listing appointment with us, sat down with us and kind of showed, like, while he was talking to the person that was selling their house, was kind of like showing us the ropes and also talking about how you would do paperwork, how you would get all the vital information that you need for listing a property and all that too. So there's another path there, is that, okay, go to a bigger agent and even just, if they're willing, sit down with them at a meeting. And it also shows their experience too, because they'll take you under their wing into a house and be like, yeah, I'm training this guy. He's the next big thing, but look how experienced I am because he's
trying to learn from you, right? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
No, I think that's a good point. Also to that, I would even say approach those big agents. And one thing I would actually say to anyone starting, and this is what someone told me, and I did this, was sit down with your broker, right? Or associate broker, whatever, and say, hey, let's go through all the contracts and learn all of the technical details and wording of it. Because my biggest beef right now, as a semi-experienced agent, number one, I'm someone who has a decent legal background, right? From university, I have a good knowledge of contract law. And then I also made it, I made it my business to learn all the contracts, the in and outs really good. So I have that good technical knowledge. And especially that also is handy as a younger person where people might come in doubting you a little bit more. But a lot of buyer's agents or newer agents in general who end up being more buyer's agents don't know anything about the paperwork. And I mean like nothing, or they have such a glazed over surface level knowledge that as soon as there's a hiccup or bump in the road or any issue comes up, they don't know how to handle it because they don't have the breadth and depth of knowledge of what you should really. So I would say learn the paperwork really well, just so you have that knowledge. And when you're starting out, you have the time to learn these things, right? So sit down with your broker, go through it. And even to Josh's point of jump on with another agent, be like, all right, hey man, I'm going to be your assistant on your next 4 to 8 deals. So I will handle all your back end paperwork, right? And fill that out in its entirety to you. And you might have to walk me through a few of them, make sure it's all correct. And then that way you're kind of seeing the front end and the back end of a deal for paperwork wise, at least.
And who knows, like maybe this agent is looking for the sproutings of a team and you become the first guy in the door for them too. So, I mean, it's kind of the worst thing they can say is no. And I mean, the best thing that could happen is you might get some free business out of it. So I would definitely do that too. I think that that's actually a really good point. The way that you and I went about it is we actually went to a alternate fee structure brokerage and kind of had a unique selling proposition going in the door. How we built our initial 25 listings or whatever in our first summer together.
Yeah.
So that's another route you could go to, is to go to brokerage.
I would say to that point is have your selling proposition for sure. Like don't just be some other agent, right? And whatever that selling proposition looks like is entirely up to you. It doesn't really matter what it is. It's as long as you have a unique one, right? And that could be brokerage specific. It could be team specific, or maybe you just have an idea as is, right?
Or even personality specific.
Personality specific, exactly, right? So, and then something to that point, and this is something we are probably both doing right now and going forward, like almost any person, number one, we're going to beat the dead horse again, personal brand. You need to work on your personal brand. And some really good advice I've heard out there from the powers that be, Gary Vee, Ryan Serhant, kind of the buzzword names you'll hear. You need to see yourself as your own media company, right? And like Josh said, so if you're someone who comes into this having a good following for whatever reason, maybe you're a good looking person, you have a few thousand followers, maybe you were popular back in the day, maybe you just really enjoyed Instagram and somehow have like 15,000 followers. If you have that, that's great. But going forward, you need to look at yourself as a media company and build up that following either way, right? And kind of need to start doing that from day one. And don't be afraid to put yourself out there and let people know what you do, being a realtor, and then also getting as many people to hear your message as possible, right? And that was one thing where I was A, kind of shy about it at the first, and B, overanalyzed and wanted every piece of content to be super perfect. And then in effect, put out like 2 to 3 posts per year, which is absurdly low, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you see people posting on the daily, like that's probably where you would want to be in creating some sort of self media company, is that you need to be very top of mind. And that's how you do it, is post frequently, post about stuff that's interesting to you and to your following. And that's how I would do it too.
Actually, if I can chime in a thought there.
Yep.
Is valuable content, right? And now, because a lot of realtor pages I see who are doing well on social media, at least right now, the camera is always pointing at them, which is
Right.
good to a degree. You do have to put yourself out there, get some nice looking photos to put on your social media, but don't make it just about you, right? I saw a picture the other day where, because it's, well, even the classic like realtor selfie, where because the camera's closest to you, it's your big dumb head is closest to the camera, also the largest, and then you can kind of see your clients in the background a little bit. Who's the center of that message? Me, which to me seems kind of cheesy, right? Like, should it not kind of be about your client in that situation? And this has a point, so I'm going to come back to it. But I actually saw one the other day where it was an agent where he posted something saying about like, congrats to my buyers on their new possession. But it was just a picture of him, like, like sitting in an office. I'm like, man, like, you don't show the house, you don't show the clients, you don't show you with them. Yeah. Like, to me, it made no sense, right? Mm-hmm. So, it can't just be all me. Look what I did. Look what I sold. Look how great I am. You do have to put those numbers out a little bit so people see you doing stuff. And I mean, there's a little bit of humble bragging to it. But for me, what I've been working on now, maybe you can't do this day one because you don't have quite as much knowledge. Not saying I know a lot, but I'm working on more of the long form content because long form content still works well, whether that's a blog or a longer video. And real estate specific, and kind of going to be launching that to my sphere and also promoting it a little bit. And I've already done some of those and gotten some really great feedback on it this far already. But essentially putting out really great information. And as you know, the Gary V-ism is put out 90% of your information for free and then just kind of charge for that last 10%.
And that's with every single industry too.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
exactly.
You're selling whatever, piping, televisions, whatever, like, you want to be the authority figure on that space. And that's really how you would do it, is you create content that's valuable to your potential clients and your sphere, and they associate you with that. You become the real estate guy, you become the countertop guy, you become whatever, right? So
I even, as I'm kind of connecting two of our points in our head here of, as you're going out, sitting down with your broker, your lawyer, whoever, trying to learn the ins and outs of the contract law, but you want to bring valuable long form content. Okay, why not just record some videos where, okay, hey, I'm Thomas Harrington and I'm going to be interviewing so-and-so. And then basically record that conversation of them explaining some sort of form to you or whatever. And then bada bing, bada boom. You've killed two birds with one stone, because you're learning as they tell you that, because you might be thinking, well, I don't have content to share with people, I'm a brand new agent. Okay, well, you can use the information that's going to be supplied to you anyways from other people to find that, right? And something like the broker explaining to you the exclusive seller rep agreement is highly specific and only going to be useful to certain people, but it's still useful, and it still gives you something to create and put out there.
Well, I mean, I know that people that are even self-represented will use the Alberta purchase agreement. So if you were to do some sort of video on that, that would create content that's kind of universal, I guess.
Right. So with the expectation that a decent amount of people will just read it and then go do it themselves, right? And then that 10% will be like, oh, well, this guy knows what he's doing, I'm going to use him.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, there's a million ways to skin a cat and approach this business. I would say the biggest thing being a new person is judging how much money you have coming into it, and probably go somewhere where they actually give you something tangible, aka leads, right? Because a lot of brokerages will sell you the dream and they have all this supposed technology they're going to let you use, but that's great. A Ferrari is nice, but it needs gas in the tank, right? To go anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and you see that time and time again that there's some sort of proprietary X that brokerage Y is offering you, but at the end of the day, does it really deliver? That's what you have to determine and make a decision based on that as well.
Yeah. And I would also say avoid any brokerages with super high desk fees, because it's not unheard of for a new agent to go 6 months before making their first deal. So if you're paying out $1,000, $1,500 a month, whatever, but there's no money income, you don't have to be a genius to know that's not a profitable equation.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean,
yeah. Oh, and don't join any brokerages that are how do I say this without saying names? That have stock options that closely resemble a multi-level marketing scheme. There we go. Don't join those.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
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 I mean, the brokerage model is definitely changing, and I think it'll look very different in the coming years, and 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really going to be, it'll be more cloud-based and arguably more boutique and local company based, and a lot less overhead, right? Especially as we get into this co-working revolution or whatever.
Right.
But even so, those are probably the two I would say don't go to as a new person.
Yeah. Don't go pay out $2,000 a month when you don't have any income coming in, and don't go to a place where you're recruited and the agent that recruited you is making money off of you. Put it that way.
Recurring monthly income off of you. Yes. Fixed recurring monthly income.
Yeah. There's something to be said about the network marketing, but when it resembles this, then that's all we'll say about that.
Yeah. All right. On to the next point here. So
yeah. What is the next point?
We've kind of jumped around here. So for someone curious about why they should listen to us with real estate, Josh, where are you now?
Currently, I own a brokerage, Revere Technologies, and we are looking at creating a lot of online platforms and stuff, and doing some pretty cool stuff with technology around real estate. But for me personally, I'm not really in the sales game as much anymore. I mean, if I have somebody that really wants to buy a house, then I mean, I'll help them out. But generally, my expertise now is in the marketing side of things, helping agents get leads and building their businesses around the real estate game, and also looking at some sort of some investing stuff that's coming down the road, probably in the next 6 months to a year. So that's where I am currently. How about yourself, Thomas?
Before we do that, by investing, like what kind of investing? Like prop tech sort of stuff, or like what?
Yeah, mostly with the investment in advising and with consulting for specifically commercial stuff. That's, as a broker, you have to be, Thomas is as well, because Thomas is actually an associate broker. You have to be licensed to be able to trade in residential real estate, commercial, and in Alberta, there's a lot of farmland and wheat fields. So we got to sell some agricultural as well. That and commercial tie-in. So specifically commercial, though, is where we're looking at doing some more investment consulting and creating some tools around it too.
Any hot tips on some technology we can look forward to seeing from Revere Technologies as a real estate consumer?
We are doing some pretty cool stuff when it comes to the deep learning and machine learning stuff when it comes to searching for homes and actually matching people with what they are looking for. Providing something a little bit deeper than the conventional search is one thing that we're really working on.
Bedrooms.
Yeah.
Square foot.
Yeah.
That's it, right? So very top of funnel.
Yeah, we're looking to get a little bit deeper. And I mean, that's what life is about, getting a little bit deeper. So
definitely. So something where me as a homeowner, I kind of click through your website, and based on my last 15 searches, you're like, okay, these are the homes for you. Don't look at other ones because these ones match what you like. So
There are some algorithms involved. Yeah.
interesting. All about the algorithms, hey? Yeah.
A little bit, but
Yeah.
And yourself? You're
Well, as for me, I am I'm a associate broker at Seller Invite, which is a local Edmonton-based company. Still doing a little bit of the alternate fee structure thing in quite a few different ways. Now, we're not the cheapest guys in town, but it's a good mix of tech and what I feel is a better way to do business, and it helps me grow as a still relatively new agent, continue to get new clients, because at 4 years you do have a decent past client sphere to milk for referrals and whatnot, and or market to, and that's kind of a different story. Actually, I have a good point about that I'll come back to. Anyways, that's what I'm doing. Just me myself as an agent. I hope to grow with this company going forward, but for me, I kind of focus more on the personal brand of me, Thomas Harrington, as a realtor for Edmonton and area, and kind of want to keep that name brand going for as many years as possible, because I do feel in our lifetimes the role of a real estate agent will drastically change. Will it disappear entirely? I'd say no, but it will change a lot. And those people who have their name brand fixated with people as the real estate guy or the real estate girl, people will still come to you, at least for a semi-foreseeable future, and you have a good income. Now, with that, I'm trying to diversify a little bit in terms of what I do. Now, for me, I don't know. I'd still like to get back to the more ownership route, such as we did briefly and you're doing now. But what that looks like in what markets, I'm not entirely sure. Right? It's a tough balance, because it would be cool to go live somewhere else, but real estate, despite being a very flexible job, is still location dependent. Right. Meaning, you at some point have to go to the actual houses in your city and work with them, whether you're buying or selling them. And your sphere will also be quite hyper localized as one agent. So it's a weird impasse where in theory, when you're trying to be like an internet entrepreneur type, you want location independence, which I almost kind of have, but then real estate specifically, it kind of evens out with being specific to a certain market, no matter where you are, right?
Yeah. One thing you touched on there is like the changing of the industry. And I think we'll talk about that closer to the end of the podcast. But one thing I will touch on and say that is universal is that if you are good at what you do, there's going to be a place for you. So you need to be striving to be the most knowledgeable or whatever it is. And that's how you keep yourself relevant through all the changes and all the whatever that goes on.
Whatever happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that even ties back to last week's episode of the talent stack. That was last week, right? Yeah. With the talent stack of, you need to build your skills and focus on building you as a brand and business and all of the above. And again, if being a realtor somehow ended tomorrow, well, at least I have a whole bunch of marketing, sales knowledge, people knowledge, psychology knowledge. I can go apply that somewhere else.
Right.
Now, one thing I want to bring back here, just because I thought of it as I said it, is so my advice to a new realtor, to sum it all up, unfortunately, man, there's a little bit of patience involved, right? If I was to go back and talk to my younger self, to your younger self, and say, you know what, you do need to wait a little bit. Like, your ambition is great, but it does take time, because this is a referral-based business. You need time to build up your client base. You need time to build up, I guess, your extended sphere or network, or people who know you and trust you as a realtor. There unfortunately is some time involved to that. Now, for me, luckily, I'm now at a point where, because I've been doing it long enough and sold enough homes and have enough past clients, that I see solid residuals come from that client database. And, it's, as a new agent, you don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear it when someone's like, you know what, man, excuse me, keep doing what you're doing, but it will take some time. And like, if someone told me, people did tell me that, I'd be like, no, like I want to do 100 deals a year now.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? But that's one thing I've definitely learned. Now, again, with one thing unique to us as young people is, well, unfortunately, even if a lot of people know you, a large percentage of your friends are not at home buying age yet, being
Absolutely not.
26 years old, if not younger, right? I started when I was 22, right? So
Yeah.
now conversely, if you're someone who's more in your like early 30s, and I've said this to agents where, because it's almost a funny thing now that I'm at a few years selling at a pretty decent level, sometimes I have new agents with the company I work for coming to me for advice who are 10 years older than me, right? And it's kind of a weird thing, but to them, I always say the same thing. Like anyone who's like mid 30s or older starting in real estate, there's no reason you can't come in and start selling 15 to 20 deals a year solely off of referrals, because your friends are older, meaning they are more likely able to buy and or sell a home or already own real estate. So if you're an older person, you almost need to go really hard on that sphere marketing, especially people you used to work with, whatever, and you might not be on social media. Cool, don't care. Starting today, you need to be on social media. So you should really just like, let's pretend you're someone who was very minimal on Facebook. And I'm saying this because I gave this specific advice to someone, and once he actually did it, it worked. I'm like, you need to go through Facebook, LinkedIn, all your old coworkers, all your high school classmates, everyone ever. Track them down if you can, add them, send them a quick hello. Hey, how's it going? Haven't seen you since grade 8 prom dance or whatever. Thanks for adding me back. Let's keep in touch, right? And then just, start putting out your real estate related content there. But
yeah, I think that's definitely one thing, is that we started super young, and there was not,
which is great, but it's hard to do too.
Soul that was buying a house, and I mean, you and I were growing out the beards because we wanted to look like we were a little bit older too when we were walking to people's houses, and they turned at us and was like, "How old are you?" You'd be like, "How old do you want me to
be?" Old enough.
Yeah. Old enough to party.
Yeah. Gonna do you incorporate super bad as this. Yeah. Well, excuse me, young man. You want to sell my house? How old are you?
Yeah.
Old enough. Old enough for what? Old enough to party. That was good.
But I mean, yeah, we were 21, I guess 22. Yeah, 2016, January 2016 for me. So that would have been, I guess 22 turning 23. Yeah. So yeah. So pretty young to get into the game, but at the same time, I mean, I don't think
I mean, I'm thankful I did it despite all the challenges. Then I'm thankful now because we're so far along, right? Like if I've gone and worked some other job and then started now, like, at least for everything that we kind of screwed up over the years, it's good that we're going, have some traction and experience too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we both were interested in real estate as a asset class. Like even before we got in, we were helping people with investments and stuff before we had even got into real estate. So
yeah, definitely had a truly authentic interest. And like you said, in the asset class itself, the actual physical homes, not always necessarily being a realtor, but that's kind of what it translates into.
Yeah.
So one thing that I kind of wanted to talk about was, how can an agent future-proof themselves, right? At least in our opinions. What are we working to, either as, real estate agents or real estate professionals in the broader sense, and kind of some holes in the industry that we see that, some of these for me even might not be able to fill myself, but if someone knew that was aware of them or whatever, they could really run with it, right? I mean, for me, I would say, so being an agent specifically is let's talk about agents and then talk about the industry, I guess, as a
Yeah,
whole.
let's
right?
do that.
So agents specifically, the one thing we've said is we're getting into this like personal brand, personal media company era. And I think that's really, really huge. And you need to do that. And the amount of agents who have even more experienced agents whose online presence is laughable, like you need to invest in that for sure, right? Yeah. Put yourself out there. And there's a little bit of a psychology hack there where if people see you doing something all the time, they will actually make the mental shortcut that you must be good at it, even if you're terrible, right? So at the very least, if you're posting all the time about real estate, people associate with you with real estate. And then the way the mind works is they're like, well, if they're doing this all the time, they must be okay at it. That's a real thing. I don't know the terms, but that's actually somewhat true from like a persuasion point of view. And I would say even putting like a very authentic personal brand out there, right? Yeah. Just being yourself, but being really personable. And then that translates into just better relationships with your clients. And one thing I want to add there, and this is something I'm working on personally, as we can see by this today, is more video and putting your face on video. Because the problem that video solves is face-to-face meetings at scale, right?
Right.
On like my busiest days, I've done 4 or 5 listing appointments in one day. And that's about the physical maximum you could really do in terms of when you factor in driving time, preparation, so on and so forth, right? And then the meeting itself takes, like an hour or so, and then you have to drive half hour either way, blah, blah, blah. Point being, video solves the scale problem of face-to-face meetings. Granted, it becomes slightly less personal, but the biggest thing you want to do with video is if someone's thinking about working with you, hopefully they read it or watch you a lot, and then they get to know you or feel like they know you on the first day they meet you, right?
Yeah. There's an authenticity gap in the world of social media right now. And I think that's like people lying about their Lamborghinis and all that shit. Like, no, yeah. But honestly, like putting out an authentic you to the world and showing people like, this is what I'm working on. This is what I do. I mean, not just showing people the like highs, but also showing people like the lows. That creates a profile around yourself that is far more relatable than somebody that is like, look at my helicopter. I landed on this rooftop over there. And now I'm going to the penthouse that I rented for $1,500 an hour and bawling out for 15 minutes on tape. So this is who I am. Like it sounds ridiculous, but honestly, there's people that do this. So yeah, being authentic and being a straight up person is a gap in and of itself in the social media realm, and parlay that into your real estate career.
Authenticity gap. That's a good word. You heard it here first. Yep. Going on long and hard.
It's going in the Oxford Dictionary.
Or at least we'll be on some like routers and Indeed articles or whatever. Or Inman, not Indeed.
Put me on the cover of Forbes.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. What else? What other type of gaps I think are there? I'm trying to think.
One thing I have recently been learning about and am working on now myself is actually this is a little more specific, but a bit of a side to, and not just real estate specific, but Facebook Messenger ads are actually very strongly growing market. Mm-hmm. And now what that means is an ad where the call to action is to send message. Technically, you can change the text to say learn more, but it will send a message is when you click the link. Mm-hmm. And using Facebook Automate, there's several automation tools to automate chats. And maybe you've seen something like this before, but you'll click on the send message and you basically type in get started or something. And then a robot will start talking to you, and you can either respond or you click from select down responses. And apparently this is working at a really good rate. And then part of it too is you then have the contact information is not email, it's not phone, it's Facebook Messenger. And then there's ways you can follow up and do drips and stuff via Messenger. And apparently within the industry, it's supposedly like an 80 to 90% open rate on Facebook Messenger ads. You also have the option to retarget someone via Facebook Messenger. So you can do those ads as well. It's an up and coming thing, and this would be a really clever thing to jump on, right? And for real estate specific, some of the things I'm seeing are either a home valuation ad or like get a list of homes under XYZ price, or kind of a niche or starter home or infill home or in basement suite homes, whatever kind of niche you want to go for there. But Facebook Messenger ads are definitely something up and coming. And for lead generation and real estate specifically, I think you could really leverage this to kind of start building a pipeline. And it's something new that people haven't really seen before as much either. So
now, is this on your Facebook page, and then you create? Is that how that works? Like you through your Facebook page?
Correct. Yeah. So through your Facebook business page, it would be Josh Blazer Real Estate. Click here to do X, and then they click on it, and then a messenger, like the native Messenger app, pops up, right? So instead of going to a landing page, it's all 100% within Facebook.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I think I had actually set up one of my stores to have that sort of like initial pipeline where you have
for sure,
like a pop up that comes in when they come to the page or whatever, and then it says like that. So yeah, I think that's probably pretty good. Do you get what information do you get from that?
It would basically be technically just their name and the ability to chat with them. Now, granted, you can ask for like an email address or something to send whatever information to, right? So it's a mix of building an email list and then also like a Facebook chat list in a similar manner to an email list, right? So
gotcha. Okay. Yeah. The only thing I'd be hesitant about would obviously be to get their email and bring that into a list externally from Facebook, because that's one of the big significant issues that you have when you're not controlling your own list, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's something new to me that I'm still learning about and going to incorporate going forward. But I definitely see a lot more of it. And from marketing consultants I've spoken to, it supposedly is working right now. And the biggest thing too is, as the old adage goes, marketers ruin everything. So I would probably get on it before everyone else does. All right.
Yeah, I was going to say the world shifts very quickly. So, I mean, you could be watching this in 30 weeks but
and there's no such thing as real estate agents anymore. So this episode's irrelevant, right? So
there you go.
Yeah. I think a big hole in the business, and maybe this would be hard to do as an individual agent, but would be a more seamless showing experience, like a true independent open house or on-demand showings, where like a buyer can just go in and view it kind of whenever by themselves. There's obviously a lot of logistical issues and headaches to that. So they're not just showing up randomly or at like 2 a.m. or whatever.
Yeah, some legalities too.
Yeah, there's a lot of legalities, but something like that where it's like a more truly tech innovative experience sort of thing, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of like VR stuff that's coming in that's pretty cool. Really big.
Yeah. I've seen some stuff on it out there where agents are doing that themselves, where they might do like a VR open house or kind of do. And it's really a touch gimmicky just to get you out to talk to people. But hey, if you're a realtor, this is a good way to start conversations with people. Host your open house, but then within that, and maybe tell your clients you're doing this before, but have a VR headset there set up with, and have like links to other comparable properties in the area that have virtual tours, right? So then you can kind of say like, hey, like you can come actually view like 7 houses instead of just this one, because we have the VR thing. And then you kind of show people using the VR headset. And I think it's just because it's such a novelty still too. You'll get some people out who just want to play with it, frankly. So
Yeah. And I think that like when you're going to go buy a house, you probably want to actually step in the house and smell it.
Yeah.
And really get
Yeah.
into that sort of thing.
Hear the train yard down the street.
Yeah. Yeah. But I do think that the VR thing has some application in filtering out properties nicely in that like, well, if we actually go and see this in virtual reality and this is not really what we're looking for, then well, we know we'll shelve it, but it allows you to kind of filter out what you're looking for too. Some of the really crazy tech stuff that we're looking into is that the Unreal Engine 4 that has come out, this is going to sound like gibberish again to people, but there's photorealism coming down the pipeline for video games, and that there's going to be some application to real estate as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, especially for like the virtual staging stuff, which is
right. Because Unreal Engine is a bunch of video games are built on Unreal Engine, correct?
Yeah. And it's fully open source. They do all of their like environments through it, I guess. I'm not the guy to talk about it at length, but I have a very 50,000 foot view, I guess.
That'd be interesting to look into, or at least keep an eye on and see what happens, right? So
yeah.
The VR AR space is getting a lot better. And then one thing that's going to be really huge, at least for Canadian realtors and Canadian home shoppers and sellers, is there's now a better integration on realtor.ca for videos and 360 tours. Meaning if you upload your link to your VR tour or whatever, it now seamlessly integrates into your realtor.ca listing, meaning right below the pictures, it'll have the actual video or, if you use like a 3DR dollhouse or whatever, like in app. I don't know if you've seen that, because that was my biggest complaint. Like even a year ago was they didn't have that. You had to click a link to an external website versus being able to view it in app, which I think is pretty big. And we'll probably get closer towards something where the MLS, rather than 30 photos or whatever, is like more of just a 3D tour in itself kind of thing, maybe.
Yeah, well, my understanding of the technology, like the Matterport specifically, is they do the photos while you do the walkthrough. So like you do have your 30 photos, but then you also have the walkthrough too. And the dollhouse, if you've never seen it, is pretty cool. Don't get me wrong.
It can be a little finicky, but it does a good enough job of getting the gist of a space, at least seeing if it's worth your time to go see it as a home buyer, especially in Edmonton or most of Alberta, where there's a ton of inventory, right? So that's a good way to stand out, right?
Yeah, and I think as costs come down for that technology, I mean, a couple of years ago it was fairly new, and a camera for that is $4,000.
Yeah, it's gone. The camera itself is still expensive, but the individual cost of the service is going down for.
Yeah, and I mean your smartphone camera is getting so good now too that there's even applications that are coming out for that sort of thing. So. Yeah. There's, I mean, the world's constantly changing for sure, but there's some pretty cool stuff to look into and hop on.
Definitely. Do you want to talk about some free resources for people here?
Sure. Yeah. Let's.
Can I get you to run with this for a sec? I have to go get my charger. My laptop's gonna die here.
No worries. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, the free resources that I would look into when getting into the industry, there's some big ones that are kind of more old school. So you got like the Tom Ferry's, where you're looking at scripts for cold calling and getting that sort of thing. I mean, I think that there's some merit to them. Mind you, a lot of this stuff is literally from the 80s. So it's something that you would probably want to take with a grain of salt in 2019, but there's still some merit to it. The other guy that we look into was, well, actually, there's quite a few older marketing books, specifically when it comes to negotiation and cold calling. But I mean, your Zig Ziglar's, your the negotiation books we were talking about last week or the week before are also pretty good. I have to look this up for a second. The one that I personally have been using or have been reading for the last little bit is the how to negotiate like your life depends on it or whatever. I think that that's definitely out there too. I'm just talking about. Oh, there he is. I'm just talking about books.
Yeah.
And also hit on Tom Ferry too.
Nice. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Were you just kind of referencing the books in our previous
Yeah.
podcast?
Yeah, previous podcast.
Yeah. We do have a reading list on our website, and I'll probably put it in these show notes again, just for some of the stuff we talked about. But you know, with marketing books, there's a lot of timeless stuff. And going back to the talent stack thing, it's almost better a lot of the times to read a more general knowledge, like something about persuasion, versus a specific real estate book, right? So
yeah, I mean, you can read your Josh Altman. What is that book that you gave me back in the day?
It is. It is Josh Altman's book, but I'm blanking on the name.
Yeah, I mean, there's like Ryan Serhant has a book now. I mean,
and it's pretty good. Is there some decent advice in there? Yes. I mean, it's just interesting to learn about. For me, just to jump into a book review on Sell It Like Serhant, is I would have personally liked to hear a little bit more about his story and kind of his in-between years, right? Because he talks a little bit how he started in New York, obviously a very hard market to get into. And then here he is, 10 years later or whatever it is. And now we all know him at this level, but there wasn't a lot of the in-between, right? Kind of at that 4-year mark, 5-year mark, 6, 7-year mark, etc.
Right.
Which, because that's where I'm at now in my career, I would have gotten a lot of value from that. And it kind of tended more towards general sales advice. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of what other ones. I mean, like you and I were both big followers of Grant Cardone, but he's not really a real estate agent. He's more of an investor.
Yeah. No, and he's not without his own, I guess, flaws or whatever. But for the free resources here, I mean, the overarching point I think we want to make is there's a lot of free stuff that you can max out. So don't go buying a $500 coaching program on your first day, right? You can go a lot further with free knowledge and free resources. So even to give a specific example is Canva, CANVA, which is a free graphic design website, right? And you can design anything from like a flyer to a Facebook post to an Instagram story, the whole shebang. I use that quite a bit for this show's graphic design, right? And it produces really great results, frankly, right? Now, to the finely trained eye, you can probably tell when someone uses Canva versus like hiring out like a designer.
Right.
But again, the free resources go very far. It looks good. It helps get your message out there. I really enjoy, and there's all kinds of podcasts, YouTube shows, blogs that can go pretty far, right? I quite enjoy Gary V's stuff. Some of his online stuff for me is a little too top of funnel general advice, but I mean, it is what it is. I really like, for realtors specifically, and maybe small businesses, is Curator. And now that's spelt a little weird. It's Curaytor, like as in like a museum curator, but with kind of a a very 2014-esque flair, using the wrong vowel in it somewhere. But those guys give some really good specific advice, especially for things like real estate, social media marketing. And they actually will give away a lot of their ad design and stuff too if you watch their shows. So, I get a lot from that personally, and a lot of good ideas.
Nice. Yeah, I'm just trying to think if there's any other resources that I really was interested in specifically getting into the industry. But I mean, there's lots of advice on the investing stuff on YouTube. There's very cheap courses on it too. I mean, this isn't necessarily a podcast specifically for agents getting in. I mean, if you're interested in investing too, like real estate is a very awesome asset class. And I mean, it's a tangible asset that you
Mhm.
can see and touch and live in and
Well, you can have a
whatever.
lot of direct control over it, right? Like if I have
Right.
a, you know, even $100,000 home or condo or whatever,
Yeah.
conversely compared to, let's say, $100,000 of Apple stock, you know, I can go drive by that condo, check on things. If something doesn't look right, I can call the manager. I
Yeah.
can't really drive past Apple headquarters and lean my head out my car window and be like, "Hey, everything good in there?"
Start
Right?
selling more iPhones. God damn
Yeah.
it. No, but yeah, like, I mean, there's value add that you can create too.
Mhm.
I mean, so yeah, I mean, a lot of people get wealthy. I think real estate is the asset class that most people, the majority of people will see getting wealthy as possible. You get your
Mhm.
leverage in there too. There's
Yeah,
lots of cool stuff with it. So
definitely. And it is, I mean, granted, doing something like a flip is quite risky, but real estate in itself is inherently a less risky asset class than stocks, even because real estate is something real. Even if the market still kind of goes down or whatever, you still have a physical piece of land that you could go live on or whatever.
mhm. Yep. So
Hmm.
I'm just trying to think. Is there anything else we wanted to touch on this podcast? I think we're over an hour here, but
Yeah, I think we're over now. I think we've gone to most of where we want to. Just for future industry predictions, let's go with that. So
okay.
specific to real estate in terms of shopping and marketing for a home, and by extension, realtors. What kind of changes do you see coming, Josh?
I think that there's going to be a lot more push to the online stuff. I think that there's definitely some technology that's getting out there. Like we were discussing a couple weeks ago, the platforms that are actually doing home flipping um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in the states
Yeah.
mostly. I don't think that
What's the term for that again?
iBuyer, I want to say.
iBuyer. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah. I think that there is some interesting stuff in this space. I also think that it's like a niche market that they're targeting with that. I don't think that it's going to
Mhm.
be
Yeah, I don't think
applicable to.
the economics of it don't work en masse as far as I can tell, but
Mhm.
what do I know, right?
Yeah. I think that's one interesting thing to look at. I mean, I think that the short term game is also interesting as millennials, how there's, well, I mean, you read articles of like, well, people can't afford houses and all this stuff. But I
Mhm.
mean, au contraire, we do have seen a lot of transactions go through.
Yeah.
So,
No, that's true, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see is the bulk of millennials, which is kind of our age, like right in the middle,
mhm,
hits true home buying age over the coming years. What'll happen there, right?
yeah,
And to that point, if you're an agent listening to this, that's where a lot of the buyers are going to come from in the next 3 to 5 years and beyond, right? But how are you going to position yourself to get in front of those good old millennials, right?
mhm.
Give them a promo code for swipe up promo code for avocado toast or
I
something,
was
and
just gonna say,
yeah.
yeah, give them avocado toast and a pet a puppy before you sell the house or whatever. But yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
how
No,
about yourself?
that's an interesting one. We kind of glossed over it, but just kind of a little more sort of 3D VR AR stuff coming into the scheme of things. One thing I've heard out there and some predictions I've read that I think will happen, perhaps more in America, and I don't know what this will look like in Canada, but a really big player like Zillow or Facebook, or maybe even Kijiji in Canada, taking over or creating or incorporating a mirror posting platform directly to the MLS,
Mhm.
meaning it would still be effectively a sell by owner package, but one of those major players allowing you to post for very inexpensive directly on the MLS, right? And
Mhm.
Zillow is pretty much already doing it because Zillow probably won't get the traction in Canada. Um, it'll be curious to see if someone like Facebook or even, like I said, Kijiji feasibly because that's sort of their route.
Mhm.
And they've already incorporated the DDF feed. However, what's interesting to that point is Comfree used to be owned by Yellow Pages. So one could argue that was Yellow Pages entering that space, and they've now sold it. And with no value add, might I add, for what it's worth. So, the Americans looking at what will happen in this situation, perhaps that could be a case study. But regardless, I could see something like Facebook coming in and allowing direct postings for listings sometime in the future. What that'll look like, I've heard people theorize they'll do it for free just so they can sell advertising space on it.
Mhm.
But it'd be interesting to see who comes in there and how that shakes things up, and if it truly gets en masse adoption or not, which is the biggest problem.
Yeah, I think that the issue is that it's such a large purchase.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, people, it generally is the largest purchase a person or a family, right? So there's still some hesitation.
Definitely, because it's not like, you can do something like buying and selling a car online with virtually no intermediary.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say that mental hang up will always be there for people, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, if I may backpedal here a little bit, but what we just said made me think of that. Is one thing I would also say to new agents getting started is, so in our market, there's a Facebook page for all the realtors, of members of the Realtors Association. They spend way too much time thinking about the competition, specifically in our market, a low cost sell by owner option, not to name any names.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, that's always going to be part of the market. I have no problem with that. But we as agents, or you as a new agent, need to understand, end of the day, those guys make up somewhere between 2 and 4% of the market share, leaning towards the bottom end of that, based on the most recent numbers available to me. So understand, 98% of the time, that's not your competition. But a lot of agents give those guys way too much mental weight, when in fact, that's not who your true competition is.
Yeah. I mean, I would argue that your competition is yourself. There's 380,000 homes in your market alone. I mean, there's probably more than that now, but I mean, like, there's just so
I wonder if that
much.
number is Greater Edmonton or Edmonton proper, but either way.
Yeah. I mean, it's whatever the tax assessment is allowed, because that's what.
Right. Yeah, I guess that would be the giveaway.
So whatever that is, but yeah. So I mean, there's a shit ton of properties. So I mean, to go get 10 sold a year, make of it what you will, I guess.
Definitely.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that I wanted to hit. Anything else that you wanted to touch on?
No, I think we hit most of these points decently enough and tried to keep it in semi-logical order here.
There'll probably be a part 2.
Yeah, we'll probably have
part 3.
Another real estate episode or two, because that's sort of our main line of business and whatnot these days, at least.
Yeah, and I think we might even interview somebody in the city when I'm back and get somebody on the show.
Yeah, I'd like to get some more in-depth kind of 2 cents on that. And yeah, we have a few contacts who can help us out with that for sure.
I mean, we've dealt with only. Yeah, so.
Definitely. Well, I think that's all for this week, hey?
Yeah, that is all for the Long and Hard podcast. As always, like, subscribe, watch us on Tuesdays around 1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Disregard this episode for that one.
Yeah, and then we're gonna, I think going forward, we're gonna say the audio will be released Wednesday mornings, officially speaking.
Yep.
Kind of around 10:30, 11 a.m., right when you're grabbing your second coffee at the office, maybe a little lull between meetings or whatever, so you have time to jump on and listen.
Third coffee.
Yeah.
And as always, Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you find your favorite podcast, you will find us. So thank you very much for listening. I am Josh Blaze. This is
Thomas Harrington. And make sure you are #always hard.
Always hard. We will talk to you next week on the Long and Hard podcast. Take care now.
Peace.